need someone to talk to and you don't know what to do, call us 214-4400 when you're feeling all alone and they turn their back on you. Call us 214-4400. Call us 214-4400. Call us 214-4400. Call us. Welcome to the Kind Counseling Podcast. It's your girl, Dania Roberts. And of course, today I have with me the host of hosts, Cammie Roberts, also known as Mr. Roberts, Dr. Roberts, Dr. Cammie, or just plain old Cammie. And we also have with us today our other co-host, Al Sue, aka Big Al, joining us all the way from VA. And once again, we are here today to give insights, share information, and bring light to various topics that affect our communities at large. And in honor of Women's History Month, sorry, y'all, we have the amazing Kalicia Hazelwood with us today. Woo!
All right, yeah.
All right, welcome, Kalicia.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
And so now let me just tell you a little bit about Kalicia. She is a licensed attorney in the state of New York and the Commonwealth of Virginia. She is on a mission to rebuild, restore, and reunite one family at a time by speaking for those who cannot speak for themselves. Kalicia handles matrimonial and family law, family immigration law, and estate planning. She has extensive and diverse experience in civil litigation, including, but not limited to, child custody and visitation, child abuse, child neglect, orders of protection, and divorce. Woo, that's a lot. When she is not making a positive difference in the lives of her clients, Kalicia enjoys spending time with her sister's pit bull, Max. Second to Max, she makes herself available to spend quality time with her human family, including her nieces and nephews. Kalicia is also a talented singer and directs the praise team at her church. To rejuvenate her spirit and take care of herself, she enjoys working out and traveling. And I want to give a hearty welcome to Kalicia in this month of March, Women's History Month. Welcome to the Kind Counseling Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So Cammie can go ahead and dive right in with his questions, because we got a lot.
All right, so Kalicia, all right. So I always want to know from all our guests, like how did you become or decide what led to you becoming a lawyer, right? Were you just like an argumentative person as a kid, or are you actually like there's something else behind it?
I don't know if I was argumentative. Maybe it depends on who you ask. I just like to say I ask the right questions, maybe sometimes at the wrong time, but is that what argumentative means? Like asking questions at the wrong time? But no, it's just, I don't know. It's just something that's always been in me. When I was younger, I used to watch The Cosby Show. And though I've never seen Claire Huxtable in court, I just knew that. Have y'all ever seen her in court?
No.
One.
That's true.
Like, I just knew that I wanted to be an attorney and I just wanted to be like her. Just everything that she stood for on that show and how she presented herself. I said, yeah, I think I could do that, even though I never saw her in the courtroom. So
that's true. She definitely was a role model for women, but even from way back then.
Yes, especially Black women.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Now let me ask you, how, I mean, I always hear about lawyers doing long hours and, doing a lot of reading. Like how emotionally taxing is it to be a lawyer? For those who don't know anything about being a lawyer.
It's kind of like, the question is kind of difficult because we learn not to get emotionally attached. right? Especially in my field. You cannot be emotionally attached to your cases. So for us, it's just always, you have to apply the law and apply the logic to the situation. What is taxing is mentally, like preparing for cases, speaking with your clients, especially in family law. I become their therapist, I become their friend, and I'm their attorney. So it's a lot, like they pour everything out on you because they have encountered people who didn't want to listen, their spouse doesn't listen, their child's mom or father doesn't listen. So like when you become their attorney, you're the one that listens to everything. So it becomes mentally draining because my firm, we have over 400, 500 clients. So to talk to these clients daily and they're pouring out so much on you, that's when it becomes mentally draining and having to prepare for all these cases.
So you're kind of like a therapist, actually.
Yeah, but I don't want to be because
only Cannon wants to be a therapist.
Because it's a lot. And like being a therapist, I have to be like, you know, empathetic. You guys could correct me if I'm wrong. I don't have a social work degree or licensed therapy or anything like that, but I feel like you have to be more empathetic. And sometimes that's what my clients are looking for from me. And I have to tell them, listen, I'm not your therapist, I'm your attorney. I'm here to tell you the truth. If you do this, this is going to happen. So when they disregard my advice and it happens, now they want to come to me to comfort them. And I'm like, no. This is what I counseled you against. And they're like, oh my gosh, can you have some feelings? Can you have a heart? And I'm like, above everything, I'm your attorney and I'm here to tell you what the outcome is. It's really hard trying to be their therapist because it's not my ministry.
Okay. So let me ask you this, Kalicia. So what can you explain a little bit to us about what those particular areas of like matrimonial and family law, family immigration law, and estate planning? Well, I think I have an idea of what estate planning is, but what do those areas really entail? Like when you say family law, what does that mean?
So family law covers a wide range of cases, especially in New York. So we have custody cases, visitation cases, child visitation. We also have child neglect, child abuse. We have family offense cases, which are orders of protection. So the family court in New York actually has limited jurisdiction over a small amount of criminal cases, and they're called family offense. So let's say Alan and I live in the same house, and we get into an argument. He breaks something in the house and I call the police. They're going to send us to family court to work that out because we both live in the same home, we're family. So they'll send us to family court and then I would ask for an order of protection. So that's family offense. We also have adoption cases. We have juvenile delinquents, which covers minors. So when they commit criminal offenses, those are sent to family court in New York. We also have PINS cases, which is persons in need of supervision. It's so many cases, and I see Alan's face like, dang, I didn't know it was this many. But it's a lot of cases that the family court covers in New York, because New York has a lot of issues. So the criminal court is overwhelmed. So the family court takes some of it to give criminal court a break.
Oh, okay, I see. So it's kind of like a separate thing from, so they wouldn't try like a criminal case in the family court and vice versa, if I'm understanding correctly.
So there are some cases where the family court has what is called concurrent jurisdiction with the criminal court. So you can be tried in family court and tried in criminal court at the same time for the same allegations. And then the child abuse and the child neglect, those are through ACS. So ACS prosecute their cases in family court. So yeah, it's mentally taxing.
So isn't that considered like double jeopardy though, if you're trying like the same case in two different courts?
No, it'd be double jeopardy if you're trying the same case twice in criminal court. Okay. Because family court is not, it's not meant to punish you. It's meant to restore the family. So yeah, so they're not receiving punishment. So family court is more like injunctive relief. So let's say for the ACS cases, right? Let's say you beat up your kid, corporal punishment, excessive corporal punishment, because corporal punishment is legal in New York. What the family court does is issue. Yeah, it is. Whoa.
Okay.
Wow.
And that's the first time
Can't use a
Okay.
weapon,
I'm
right?
sorry, I'm surprised to hear that. I didn't know that was
Wait,
Yep.
you just can't use a weapon, right? Like,
Right.
you can't use a
right.
weapon.
Yeah, like a
Okay.
belt.
Like a
You
belt,
know?
right?
You're dealing
Right,
with
but
men.
corporal punishment is legal in New York. So what happens is, let's say use a belt, the child has marks and bruises. What the family court does is issue orders for you to go to therapy, for you to go to counseling, for you to get anger management. So those are the types of relief that you get in family court. So criminal court is like, we're sending you to jail, that's it.
Right,
Okay.
gotcha.
Okay. And how does that differ from matrimonial law? Or
So in New York separates family law and matrimonial law. In Virginia and Michigan, it's all under family law. But again, New York has a lot of cases. So matrimonial law is strictly divorce. And that's not in family court, it's in Supreme Court in New York. So any divorce, alimony, maintenance is what they call in New York, alimony, child support too. So if you're divorced and you have kids, like the child support and the child custody will be decided by the Supreme Court, unless if the Supreme Court sends it to family court for the child custody portion to be resolved. So in New York, matrimonial divorce is separate court by itself.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
So
a lot.
I have a question for you, right? So as I was going over your website with a fine-tooth comb, right? I noticed that you said that you're passionate about fighting for the rights of minority fathers.
And my
Which
partner is too.
say it again?
And my partner is too. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So
We
tell
are.
me the story behind that, because that's not something that I usually hear, especially from a woman.
Yeah. So she and I, we both used to work for ACS. We prosecuted child abuse and child neglect cases at ACS. And if you guys are familiar with ACS, you know that they can take away your kid and throw your kid in foster care, right? So a lot of the cases that came in, we would have a mom, she would have an ACS case. ACS would be like, oh, we got to remove the kid. We're going to put the kid with the grandma. And I'd be like, hold up, this child doesn't have a father? Like, where's the father? And you would be so surprised at the amount of caseworkers that come in, didn't look for the father, didn't try to call him, didn't contact him. They're like, oh, we're going to put the kid with a mom. We're going to put him with the mother's sister. It's always, most of the time, it's the mother's side of the family. And I held up a lot of cases just because I'm like, I'm not filing this case unless you find the child's father. Unless if you call the father and ask the father, do you want this child? And sometimes the moms would say, oh, I don't know who the father is. Oh, the father hasn't been in the child's life. And a lot of times they're lying, right? So,
Really?
so I'll
Wow.
ask my caseworker, like, you guys have investigative power. Look for this father. And then we'll call the father to be like, oh my goodness, I haven't seen my kid in X, Y, and Z. She won't let me see the kid. I've been trying to get a hold of the child. She's blocked me. I've come to the home. They've moved. And then when the father comes into court, the judges give them a hard time. Because why? Because they have dark skin, because they dress different, because they speak differently. And some of the judges would even say, oh, you have to take a drug test to get your kid. Why? This person doesn't have a case against him. You know, there's no allegations of drugs. Like, why does he have to take a drug test? Because he's Black? So then ACS would be like, okay, we have to think about if we want to put the child with the father. And my partner and I, we would push back so much, like, no, this father needs to have his child. And a lot of things we would hear is like, oh, this is his first child. He's never had a kid before. How is he going to have a kid in his care? How did the mother have a kid in her care when it was her first child? You know? So it was just like always those types of bias. And it just made me feel sad because here we are. We have these fathers, Black fathers, that want to be a part of their child's life. And not only is the mom making it hard for them, but the government and the system is making it hard. So I said, you know what, when I get on the other side, I'm going to make sure that Black fathers that come my way, we're going to fight for them extra hard for them to have their children. And we want to educate them. We want to take it a step further. We want to educate them even before they get into family court so they can know what they should do, what they shouldn't do, what they're up against, so that they have a better chance of having custody or visits with their children.
So Dania, just 1 second. I'm just to follow up with that, right? Because I have quite a few men that come for counseling, and I always hear that they feel as though the legal system is slanted towards women, especially in New York City. Would you agree with that?
I would not. let me tell you, and I would tell you why I don't agree. I don't agree because Black men in particular, this is the mistake that they make. And I say this over and over again. When they and their child's mother do not get along, let's say you're living with your baby mother, you're not married, we're talking about unmarried men. They're living with their baby mother. All of a sudden, you and your baby mother get into an argument. What do? They leave the house and they leave the kid. And once you do that, that's when the clock starts tolling about you having access to your child. If you take your child with you, you're going to have a better chance. And a lot of men don't do that. Because, and I understand, because once you take the child with you, what's going to happen? Oh, she going to call the police. But what you need to say to the police is, there is no custody order. I have 50-50 rights to this child, and you cannot arrest me. So they make the mistake, and that's the biggest mistake they make. They leave the child with the mother, and then you become a weekend dad. So what happens is when you go to court, the judge is like, well, how often have you been seeing the child? Every weekend. So then that's what you get. You get every weekend.
Okay.
And they don't understand that part.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Kalicia, recently I saw a clip of a client of yours that was very emotional because you helped him win a case for custody for his child or children. I don't remember if it was children, but there's a lot of passion in your voice about that. Is there a story behind that passion and why you advocate for fathers? Because you're probably the first attorney I've heard say that you're fighting for the dads. Most people don't fight for the rights of the father. They fight for the rights of the mother. So what's the story behind that passion?
The like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now back to the show.
Yeah, that client, he is very determined. He was in court for 10 years, and obviously I wasn't his attorney for 10 years, but he was in court for 10 years because the mom kept getting a bunch of ACS cases. So once you get ACS cases, it delays the custody because the procedure is to take care of the ACS case and then decide on the custody. But he stuck it out, and he's the perfect example, right? He was able to get full custody because he took his child with him. He took his child when his child was 6 months, and his child was living with him full time. And the judge gave him a hard time. He's from East New York. He speaks his mind. His yes are his yeses, his no is his no's. And some of the judges gave him a hard time, but at the end of the day, they could not deny him custody because he's been with the child. He's been taking care of the child. And now the mom is going to have to pay him child support. So this is the type of education we want to teach Black fathers.
Yeah.
So I have a question. What is like your most unfavorable case you've ever dealt with?
Unfavorable. It would probably have to be when I was at ACS. That case was unfavorable because the victim, she actually got murdered. Yeah, it was a domestic violence case. And it's one of the few cases where I agreed with what ACS was doing. And there was a father on the case. Him and his girlfriend lived together, and the child lived with him. And the child reported a lot of arguments in the home. The girlfriend ended up reporting that the dad beat her up so badly that she suffered TBI. And she was like admitted to the hospital for like 2 weeks. But here's where it's interesting, right? Because this dad wasn't Black. He's Hispanic, but he's like white Hispanic. And he presented himself very well in court. He looked really good. So people believed him. People are like, oh, he doesn't look like the type of person to beat up a woman. And every time he comes to court, everyone loved him. ACS even loved him. But I was like, this man's lying, because I think I found like his ex-wife or somebody that said the same thing. But both of the women were darker skinned women. So then we have that where they don't believe the women. And then ACS ended up giving him a settlement and wanting to dismiss the case. And I was like, I don't think this is what we should do. But at that point, it's not my call because I have to listen to my supervisors. And then a month before the case was going to be dismissed, he killed his girlfriend. Thank God the child was with the mother. At that time, he killed the girlfriend. And then I think like a neighbor heard, and the neighbor called the cops, and the cops showed up at the door. And the only thing he said to the cops was, wait, let me put on a shirt. And he had blood all over him. And that's all he said to the cops.
So
and it made me,
That must have bothered you though, right? Like,
It
no,
bothered
you
me.
stop that at the gate.
I tried. So the thing with domestic violence victims is that they have to want to get out of that situation. So I tried so much to get her help, to contact her, to let her know, like, we're here, we can get you in a shelter, you know, don't go back to him. Even my CPS worker, CPS supervisor, like, we all tried, and she didn't listen. Yeah, she went back to him.
Wow.
Yeah,
I wonder if we could just rewind a little bit, Khaleesi, because I feel like you didn't answer my question about your passion for the advocacy of fathers. So I was just asking if there's a story behind, you know, the reason why you choose to advocate for fathers. I've never heard anybody with your perspective. So is there a story behind that or no? Or is it just?
Yes, I didn't grow up with my father. So when I see fathers who want to fight for their children, it makes me passionate about it because it's something that I've wanted. I've wanted that relationship with my dad. So when I see a mom or the system stopping a father, it just makes me a little bit frustrated because you have a father that wants to be in the child's life. So that's what drives that passion.
Got it. Yeah,
Okay.
makes sense now. Yeah.
So I know as we were prepping for the podcast, you had mentioned that that you had some mental health issues on your own or for your that you were dealing with. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I was engaged, I think in 2013, and I broke off my engagement because my ex-fiance was physically abusive. And yeah, he was physically abusive and he did a lot of bad things to me. And he said a lot of mean things to me. So coming out of a relationship like that, it changes you. And it kind of like scars you. So I had like a lot of anxiety from that relationship and depression. And I just felt myself dying. And I felt like nobody around me knew because it's like, I always have to be the strong one and I always have to put on. So going through that, I knew that everybody who takes medication, that's fine. But for me, I would rather not take the medication. I'd rather go through therapy, you know, pray, and probably take something that's a little bit more holistic. So that was my method, but I still struggle with it a little bit, not as much. But I just remember like days where I wouldn't want to get out of the bed, where I wouldn't want to hang around anyone, where I wouldn't want to do any work, but I still had to push. And this was through going through the end of law school, studying for the bar exam, you know, starting my first career as an attorney. And I guess just for women, and Alan, going back to you, I guess that's why that story hit me so hard with the lady, you know, that passed away, because it's like, that could have been me had I stayed in that situation. I just thank God that I was strong enough. And I thank God that I had the support of my family, because once I told my family, you know, what my ex-fiance was doing to me, they're like, oh, no, you.
Already know.
Yeah.
Alan was like, I'm about to put on
Pull
the
up.
tips and pull up.
That's it. Pull up.
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had the support of them to get out of it, but I didn't know that it would affect me mentally and emotionally as much as it did. And getting through it has been tough, but it has made me who I am today. Yeah. Could I have done without it? Yes. But I do believe that I am stronger because of it.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about maybe what lessons you've learned coming out of that whole experience? You know, Women's History Month, empower those of us that may be still in a situation like that. Like, what advice would you give? You know, how did it shape you? What did you learn from that?
Learn first, you have to put yourself first, right? And make sure that you're taking care of yourself, and you have to be happy on your own. You cannot look for happiness in someone else, and you can't look for that validation in someone else. Also learn that you have to put up your boundaries. And when you set your boundaries, make sure you stick to them. And if somebody shows you their hand the first time, believe them. Because people would say, you know, people like me, women who are quote unquote strong, women who have career don't go through things like that, right? But it's not true. Like, we go through it just as much. And a lot of people were surprised to hear that I was dealing with something like that. And when I saw it the first time, my thing was like, oh, this is just, the first time, he'll change. And it's like the second time was the same thing. I just kept denying it, like, okay, it's not going to get worse. And it just kept getting worse. So if you see the signs, if you see the red flags one time, don't make it turn into 2 times. Don't make it turn into 3 times, because it's something that's progressive. So I would tell that to a woman. And for me, I remember calling like a domestic violence hotline. And I said to the lady, I said, how do you know you're in a domestic violence relationship? She was like, well, if you're asking that question, you are. So if you're asking yourself that question, then more than likely you are.
Wow. Wow.
So you mentioned that you were in therapy for this. Is that what you said?
Yep.
Okay. I mean, so a lot of times when I'm when I'm counseling people, like they can sometimes think like blame themselves. I mean, is that at any point did you struggle with that?
Yeah, I think at the beginning, I struggled with blaming myself and like saying to myself, how could you even choose this person? Like, this is your fault. You should have been smarter than that. How could you let this go this far? But the most thing that I struggled with is just like wasting my time, like the time that was wasted. And that has been the hardest to forgive myself.
Okay. All right. So you're still in therapy now, or that was like back then, or?
No, I'm still in therapy.
Okay. All right.
How long were you with your ex-fiance?
3 years.
Okay. All right.
It's a process. It's a process. And, it speaks to not just you, but so many others, women particularly. And just, again, Women's History Month. And, women, we just put up with a lot. Really do endure a lot in relationships. Not that men don't. Okay, guys, so don't take it the wrong way, but I think women have the potential to just sort of accept everything in a relationship, and oftentimes it's for the sake of appearance, for the sake of if there's children in the relationship or whatever. We just endure so much, and so kudos to you for being able to walk away.
Thank you.
I also think that's super commendable that even through all of that, you're still going into court to try to fight for men to get back custody of their children. I think that's that must be tough sometimes when you're dealing with those cases and trying to put those families back together, dealing with the situation you had before and not looking at it from a personal perspective.
Right.
So kudos to that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I did want to ask you that. Do you like typically we hear about legal cases where women are in domestic violence relationships. Do you see a lot of cases with men reporting being in the domestic violence relationship?
I have two clients, and I won with both of them.
Okay.
Ooh.
So I mean, so is there a different approach when it's a male as opposed to female, or is it pretty much the same?
I don't know if it's not a different approach, but I would say that the outlook is different. I would say so, because you're looking at a man, right? And you're like, oh, he's strong. He weighs this much. He's this tall. And I just think that bias is there, whether it's a woman judge or a male judge. I just think it's there. So you really have to hone in on the facts. And I always tell my male clients, make sure you say you're scared. Make sure you say X, Y, and Z, because the judge needs to hear that, because it's like taboo for a man to be like, oh, I'm scared of her. I feel threatened, because the assumption is he's the man, he's stronger, he's bigger. But I won both of them, so I'm happy. I mean, they're happy too.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a client who I had to say to him, listen, man, next time you put your hands on me, So, and the funny thing is, like, as therapists, we're trained to give people safety plans, and it felt almost kind of strange telling a man how to be safe
No, run.
from a woman.
Yes.
No.
Not
Just like
run.
what you're saying.
No, sometimes you do gotta run though.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I mean, it felt a little weird saying, well, listen, man, next time you know you got to have some place to go and where you're gonna take the kids, and it just felt. I mean, I'm not trying to make fun of it, but it just
Mm.
you know, and the woman is obviously like a lot smaller than him, so it was
Yeah.
kind of like you know.
And
Yeah.
imagine a judge hearing it too, because they're so used to hearing the opposite. So one of my judges, my client, he asked for an extension of his order of protection. And I had another attorney cover for me and the judge didn't extend it. And I'm like, nah, I'll take care of it. I'll go do it. By the time I was done, she was like, okay, I'm extending it for another year. I'm like, yeah, because for her, she's heard the other side so many times that it's like, man, you really need an extension? Like in her head, she's probably like, man up. Like,
Mm. Mhm.
Right.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, boys are trained also, don't hit girls, right? So you
Mhm.
train
That's
since
true.
you're little, like, don't hit girls. So I
Yeah.
mean, I've seen some things online where women are like beating guys up and the guys are trying to get away from it. You know what I mean? And God forbid he does protect himself. And
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
flipped. Right now, you're the aggressor and you're going to
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happens. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Right.
And it's terrible to think about, because we have a son, and we of course we tell him not to hit a woman or anything like that, but I don't like the idea or the notion that a woman is hitting on my son.
Exactly.
I
I
and
agree.
I would absolutely tell him, do what you got to do to defend yourself. There's no reason for anybody.
Look at Kevin's face.
Yeah. No, I'm very for real about that. There's no reason for anybody to put their hands on anybody. Use your words if you have to, but don't put your hands on anybody. So I don't like the notion of a woman hitting my son
I agree.
any more than I like the notion of a man hitting my daughter.
Right.
Exactly. I agree.
So they have a right to defend themselves and without penalty.
I agree. Because this might hit my nephew is on. Shoot, I
Right.
agree.
Right. Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
Well, like Chris Rock said, I wouldn't hit a woman, but I would shake her real hard, right? So I mean, is that what you're gonna say now? Ironic that Chris Rock is saying that, but hey. I mean,
Yeah. Well, Will Smith ain't no woman, so
wow.
he would have had to get somebody else to help him shake Will Smith.
Oh.
Yeah.
So actually, I do have another question. I think I have a client who is she's been in court for gotta be close to 3 years now trying to get a divorce. How come divorce cases take so, not that I'm advocating divorce, but how come divorce cases take so long in New York?
Yeah. It's so easy to get married and so hard to get divorced in New York.
Right.
It depends on your partner and how contested it is. And a lot of divorce cases, a lot of them, you pay attorneys for it. So they make money the longer they're on the case. That's one side of it. The other side of it is that you have to wait until the court has a date. And a lot of these courts are backed up. So for example, I have a divorce case. We went to court, I want to say in July of last year. And then our next date was February of this year. So that's common, but it depends on if the parties are agreeing. If they're not agreeing, then it's going to take longer. We're fighting over the kids, we're fighting over the house, we're fighting over the dog, we're fighting over the parrot, we're fighting over furniture. So it's going to take longer. If your partner agrees, then it's a little bit more smooth.
Is it mostly financial though that you find? Like most of the fights are financial, right?
Yeah, financial and kids. People fight over their kids a lot.
So have you ever had a case where it's a divorce case and you say to them, I mean, just based on how they're interacting, you see that there's a chance that they might be able to work it out, or like maybe the issues aren't that serious, and you ever refer them to like a mediator or couples counseling or what have you?
Yes, we refer them to mediation. That happens a lot.
Really?
But then, even in family court for child custody, if it's like really, really contested, we'll refer them to a mediator.
Well, I meant more like if you could see them, you see, because I'm a romantic at heart, right? So like, no, I'm serious, man. So if you see that there's a possibility that that they could work it out, I mean,
work it out in the sense of them getting back together, that kind of work it out,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
work out the
yeah,
divorce.
not the financial. She's like, they don't pay me for that, right?
No, I've never seen that. I've never seen
Really?
that. Usually by the time they get to me, they're like, I'm done, I'm over it, I hate him. I just want to be
Wow.
done.
Wow.
Yeah.
I got a question about mediators because
Mhm.
I've dealt with one of those back in my youth.
Yeah, you.
What are their qualifications to mediate? Because the one I had back in my youth was horrible. Like,
Where did you
What-
get
what-
that one
what-
from? Who assigned the mediator to you?
a judge?
Okay, so if it's assigned by a judge, usually they are like licensed social worker. So it's the LMSW,
Mm.
and then they have to go through like the mediation training. But
Oh.
there's some people who don't do all of that. They're just like, oh, I'm a mediator because they make money. They charge anywhere from $400 to $750 an hour for mediation.
Jeez.
Um,
She didn't do much mediating.
Tammy, you need to get on that panel.
He does. You do.
For real.
Facts.
Spoken like a true wife, yes.
Facts.
Yeah.
So, wait, I didn't. The last thing you said, Khaleesi, I didn't about the panel. You said.
Said facts. You should get on it. Seriously, because we need more Black mediators.
Mm.
We're gonna talk after the podcast. All right.
Yeah. Mhm.
Mm.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All right. So, just in terms of, we didn't ask you though. In terms of, let's say, a young person aspiring to be a lawyer, like, what kind of advice would you give to that? Because you hear a lot of young kids say, "I want to be a lawyer," right? So, how hard is it to be a lawyer? Like, what's the process? Like, tell us.
Hard. Run. Like Ella said, run.
Really?
Really?
Yes, it's hard. Like,
Okay.
Yeah.
and people be like, oh, I want to be a lawyer because I could argue. Like, please, that's the type of person that shouldn't be a lawyer. Please just stop. Don't do
Wow.
it. Lawyer, like this thing, the training itself is very hard. Like I've never cried so much being in law school, and other lawyers will tell you that too, because we have to read and read and read and read, and it really rewires your thinking. And it makes you think in a way that you've never thought before. Like people don't think like that in everyday life. So like it's like boot camp. That's like how to explain
boot
it.
camp.
Get it right. Get it right.
All right, but go ahead though.
For real. Like most lawyers are not going to be like, yes, go ahead and be a lawyer. You really have to, this really has to be something that you want to do. And for me, since I'm a Christian, something that you're called to do. So the law school that I went to, it has a saying that says law is more than a profession, it's a calling. And I always tell people that I would not have made it out of law school if it was not for my faith, because it's one of the hardest, well, the hardest thing that I've ever done. It's very difficult. And then studying for the bar exam, like I was at the hospital like 2 times during that whole month of studying.
Really?
Yeah, because I got so sick. I was studying 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah.
I have my goddaughter is in law school now, and she said that the first year of law school is designed to weed out the ones that think they want to do it, but don't really have the stamina.
Exactly.
Is that true?
Very true. The first year is hard, but I would say that the first year is hard because it's something we've never done. So it's like it's like exercising your physical body. Like that first week in the gym is always the hardest. And then after that, it's still hard, but you know, you're used to it or you're more familiar with it. So I would say like the second and third year is still hard, but because now you've been programmed to think the way they want you to think and read the way they want you to read, it's a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
It's crazy.
Listen, I have a lot of questions, legal questions. I'm gonna have to call you some other time, but you know, just out of curiosity. I mean, like I ask questions all day, every day. That's all I do is ask questions, right? So, but I do want to, is there anything you want to say about, like, for example, how would somebody contact you if they wanted to hire you as a lawyer? Because that always comes through my office. So how would somebody get in contact with you?
So they can call our office. It's 1-855-HERS Law. So that's 1-855-HAZELAW. We're all over social media. If you Google my last name, it's gonna come up. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube. So, and then of course our firm's website is hazelaw.com. And that link would give you all of our phone numbers and all of our social media handles.
Okay,
Okay.
good.
Mhm.
All right. So is there anything else you'd like to share with the people before you go?
Hire me.
Yeah, yes, I know that's right. Hire me.
Hashtag.
Yes, hashtag hire
All
me. And we're gonna be sure to drop those links in the description of this podcast. But I personally just want to say kudos to you for overcoming, everything that you've been through in your life,
Yes.
even those years of law school that sound like absolute hell. But you came out on the other side. So kudos
you.
to you.
Thank
Kudos
you.
to you.
Yeah.
And
Thank
keep
you.
up the excellent work.
Thank you.
Support dads out there.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Black
right.
fathers
Yes.
really do matter. They really
They
do.
sure do. They sure
Yeah.
do. They sure do.
All right.
Well, thank you
Khaleesi,
guys for having me.
yes, and thank you again for sharing your story and coming on and telling us about your profession. We appreciate
No problem.
Yes, thank you for coming, Khaleesi.
You're welcome.
All right. Take care now. Alan, you can go watch a game.
Took a loss, I learned a lesson. I won't ever think I'm better than the next man. I've been down before to come up, I ain't stressing. Baby, I'm too busy counting.